Let me say my official hello. Good morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and Europe, Dubai. Good evening to our friends in India and Nepal, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia. Good late evening to our friends in Australia. Nice to see you all. I see that we have somebody from Lithuania.
Question 1, dear Ajahn Achalo. I wanted to ask about the difference between Dana, Sila, Bhawana, and Sila, Samadhi, Panna. I understand the meaning of the words, but I'm wondering if they are referring to the same path, but in different stages of development, or if there is another reason to describe the path in these two different ways. Thank you very much.
So there is a lot of overlap. As far as I've observed, they are used interchangeably. So sometimes it's basically a condensation of the Eightfold Path. Eightfold Path can be translated as Dana, Sila, Bhawana, or Sila, Samadhi, Panna. In general, the Dana is emphasized a livelihood, and because of that, they have some income. And whereas the monks, if they're keeping the rules strictly, won't have personal funds. So lay people can be generous with money if they have enough to spare. And this is the foundation, of course, being able to relinquish something physically, or some of your material things, or some of your talents, some of your time, various ways to be generous. This, as well as creating important merits that brighten the mind and weaken the habit of grasping and clinging and acquisitiveness, covetousness, all of these negative things, it also trains the mind to be able to let go of mind states. This is very, very important, and oftentimes people don't quite realize that link. There's that sense of be generous because it's good, be generous because it's nice, be generous because to the Sangha, because the Sangha needs people. If people don't feed us, we'll die. But actually, most importantly, you are training yourself in being generous, how to let go of things. And so in the meditation, when people want to develop samadhi, they have to learn how to recognize and let go of the 5 hindrances. So this training in generosity is training us to be able to do that, put things down. So we relinquish and give up more coarse things first. And this is training us to be able to recognize and put down more subtle things. And so developing samadhi is largely about letting go of the things that obstruct it and keeping the attention on wholesome objects which incline the mind to right collectedness. So at the same time, Sila is often translated as a higher practice of generosity. So it's not the case that it's often understood that the monks and nuns should teach. That's the way that we practice generosity. We also practicing Dana, Sila, and Bhawana, and what we give to the lay people is teaching, it's encouragement. But the practice of Sila itself, suppose a monk or a nun never, or an 8 precept keeping, or any of you, a 5 precept keeping layperson, or an 8 precept keeping layperson, or 10 precept keeping monk or nun, you are offering freedom from fear. It's called the apaya dana. So in practicing Sila, we're giving the beings around us freedom from fear. We are not going to steal from them. We're not going to hurt them. We're not going to betray them. We're not going to use them inappropriately for sexual pleasure, various things. So in the Sila, there is also dana. So that's why Sila, Samadhi, Panna actually also contains dana. And of course, when you, as we just did, you do some meditation and then you dedicate merit, you're actually sharing. It's still dana. It's generosity on a more subtle and refined way. And can be enormously helpful. Like sometimes ghosts can be reborn when somebody dedicates merit to them. So merit is a powerful and potent thing that can be shared. So we're all practicing dana, sila, bhavana, and sila, samadhi, panya. But in terms of why, in general, dana, sila, bhavana is taught to the lay people, is because the lay people are more likely to have personal funds. And then the reason why sila, samadhi, panya is more frequently taught to the monastics is you can specialize a bit more. You can breaking up the word bhavana into being samadhi and panya. So you can talk about ways to develop samadhi, and you can talk about ways to contemplate, to develop wisdom. So what Buddha explains that we develop wisdom through listening and reading, suttamaya panya, and then we further develop wisdom through contemplating, considering deeply that which we've heard, which we've studied. Does it make sense? And then we practice the Bhavana Maya Panya, insight that comes from meditating correctly according to the teachings that we've heard, the 3 ways of developing wisdom. So yeah, that's in Bhavana, but when you talk about Samadhi and Panya, then you can talk about it a little bit more specifically, more details, more instructions. But yes, they're both abbreviations of the Eightfold Path, and there's a lot of overlapping. Sometimes it's like just looking at the same thing from a slightly different angle, is the way I see it. I don't see them as being really different, just the same thing from a slightly different angle.
Thank you, Ajahn. Question to the Ajahn. During meditation practice, tears arise during entire metta practice and towards the end of a deep Vipassana practice. They are tears of sadness and felt as a tight pain in the abdomen and numb vibration in the heart. I know sadness is an impermanent fabrication of the mind. Why does this occur? Other than awareness, can something be done with this arising mind state? Is this a purification of the mind? This arising mind state is creating aversion towards meditation. Thank you for your help, Ajahn, with great metta.
Yes. So, minds are sensitive things. The human heart. It's not uncommon for people, I would say everybody, when everybody comes to meditation practice, there will be some, if you want to use the kind of psychological words, there will be some wounding on the level of the mind, some wounds. So what does that mean? That means that we all got hurt at some point in our childhoods, all of us, no matter who you are. And sometimes if you have perfect parents and you're in a safe situation, you might be upset and your mum picks you up and she holds you and cradles you and fills you full of love until you stop crying and she tells you it'll be okay. And that can be very helpful. But even a perfect mother can't do that all the time. And so there are going to be times where a baby's crying and the baby's ignored, or a baby is hurt and the baby is not comforted. And then we do live in a very complicated world where, unfortunately, virtue is degenerating. And it's not uncommon to have broken families. It's not uncommon to have abuse in families. So many people have experienced some physical trauma, some psychological trauma, just in the course of making it to be an adult. You have gone through some painful things. And if you were in a safe environment where the mind, psychological mind, psyche, felt that it was safe to express its emotions, you may have cried at the time when it was painful and you may have largely put it behind you. But it is also the case that for many people, one doesn't feel that it's a safe place to experience and express an emotion. So that's where we get into the territory of suppression. And so we've all had some suppressed, we all have some suppressed emotions, because like I said, even perfect parents they're going to make some mistakes, or they're not going to be perfectly available all the time. And we are still going to meet some people who hurt us, even if our parents are ideal. But as most parents aren't ideal, and probably we've all had some very painful experiences, and some of those emotions got squashed down into the emotional body. So I don't think, you're not going to read that in the sutras. This is psychological jargon. But in my experience as a meditator, 25 years of meditation, there is such a thing as an emotional body. There is layers of consciousness, and suppression does occur. And so sometimes when we come to meditate, it's actually a good sign that painful emotions are arising and passing through consciousness. I would take it as a good sign. What it means is there's an increase in sensitivity. It means the system's kind of opening up and things are flowing through. And yes, one can, if there's a lot of painful emotions that need to pass through the mind, that can make one reluctant to do the meditation. But we have to persist and we have to be determined, because that will cease. There will be the day where I remember from the early years in my meditation, some of my own early childhood traumas having to be released, flow through consciousness. And I do a lot of the metta practice. So when you're experiencing that, you have to do metta to yourself. When you're the sentient being that has suffering passing through the mind to the point where there's tears, that's the time to be focusing on that being. May I be well, may I be happy, may I be well, may I be happy, and just holding the love in the heart area until the emotion ceases. It's important not to stop there, because we do need to develop our metta to be more impartial and include more and more beings. We don't just want to have loving kindness for ourselves, but it is the absolute necessary foundation. So if you have painful emotions coming up while you're doing the meditation, then metta practice for you is the practice as far as I'm concerned. But try to take it to cessation. So try to have loving kindness and keep aiming loving kindness in that heart area until that painful feeling and those tears cease. And then notice the cessation. Very, very important. You have to have your awareness of arising, staying for some time, ceasing, functioning at the same time as you develop loving kindness for this conventional being. I don't want to complicate things unnecessarily, but I kind of have to. Another phenomenon that could be occurring is that kamma is ripening on the level of the mind, which might not have anything to do with early childhood or early adult trauma. So sometimes, because as far as I'm concerned, as far as the Buddhist suttas and the Krupa Ajahns talk matter-of-factly about the existence of past lives. So when we keep good precepts and we meditate more, the mind gets more sensitive, more open, and then it becomes possible that karmas start ripening on the level of the mind. So I've had that experience many times when nothing's going wrong in the monastery or in my life. I'm quite happy. I come to meditate and a painful emotion blossoms in the heart area out of nowhere. And then it stays for some time and it ceases. And sometimes in periods of retreat, many people know I've had 7 periods in the jungle with the Wat Nanachak community as a younger monk, going in and basically having most of the day and night to meditate by yourself with a lot of sense restraint and very little contact and a lot of renunciation. And, when you're meditating that much for a period of months, you get a bit of a sense for, okay, this is related to early childhood. Okay, this is related to that occasion. Forgive others, ask forgiveness, dedicate merit, heal things, put them down. But then there's other times where it's like, I can't locate this. I don't know where this is coming from, but it's so painful. And then that's when you have the sense, okay, well, this seems like it's from a past life. And so I've definitely had occasions where a painful emotion is arising in the heart space area with no memory, no conscious memory attached to it, and yet very painful. And so, but once again, so sometimes a story is helpful and other times you don't need a story. What you need to know is, right here is a conventional being that's suffering. And then you have loving kindness for that conventional being and you support that conventional being until the suffering ceases. And then you can contemplate not self. But while there's suffering there and there's a being suffering, may I be well, may I be happy. When it ceases, cessation, it's not self. Conventionally, yes, but ultimately, no. And then abide in spacious awareness without a being suffering, just awareness that knows the body is a body, thoughts as thoughts, feelings as feelings. But it's not uncommon for meditators, when they begin to deepen their practice, to have some painful emotions to have to process and relinquish, or just allow into consciousness for some time until they cease by themselves. And there's some value to it, because you do get a good lesson. Lord Buddha's first noble truth on dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, we get to have a really good look at that. It's true, isn't it? Look how much pain there is in conscious experience. Yeah, it's true. What the Buddha said is true. And we could develop, and then what's ultimately the cause? Ultimately, the cause of it is the craving for and craving not for. We don't want the painful feeling. So we would prefer a pleasant feeling. Even deeper than that, the cause of it is identifying with it, thinking that your body and your mind is a self. So then when there's painful feelings, there's a sense of self that suffers. What's the antidote? What's the remedy? Develop mindfulness, contemplate not self, have insights into impermanence. So we have to have a dynamic practice for this reason. We have to have a good number of tools in our toolbox. So suppose you're going through a period where you have a lot of painful emotions passing through. Well, then you need to be doing other practices which are enjoyable. So that's when a devotional practice of chanting can be very helpful. Okay, you might be kind of aware, oh God, I have to go into that meditation space, it's going to hurt. So, okay, do your favorite chant before that and give a rise to some faith. Recollect what you love about the Buddha, his enlightenment, what you love about his teachings, which Sangha members you love and appreciate for gratitude for. Make the mind glad, so that you don't have this sense of, oh God, I'm going to do my spiritual practice, it hurts so much, dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. It's not all dukkha. There is sukha. Sukha is pleasant feelings that arise and stay for some time and cease. And so there are a wholesome spectrum of pleasant that we should give rise to, samatha, our anusattis. Really think about what we love about the Buddha. Really think about the favorite teaching. Think of why we're grateful. Gladden the mind. Come and do your practice. There might be some painful feelings there. Okay, have loving kindness for yourself. It's possible to have, a psychologist friend of mine uses the term parallel functioning. So it's like on one level there's suffering. On another level, you're radiating loving kindness from a space of clarity towards the suffering. So there's something else as well. There's not just the suffering. And contemplate it in that way. And in my own experience, I'd say most of my own early childhood or adolescent traumas have been healed, have arisen in consciousness, stayed for some time and ceased. I don't think there's any suppressed emotions that I still need to process, at least from this lifetime. And so it does, the load gets lighter, and the likelihood of experiencing pleasant mind states in meditation increases the more effort we put into it. But please understand that it's normal, and please persist, and please find joyful ways to support yourself in the practice when you go through rough patches. But as I said before, there's many benefits. As you develop a capacity to be empathic, patient, and kind towards your own suffering, then that becomes a quality that you can share with others. You become a person who is aware of suffering, aware of truth, and you become a person who is capable of responding to that with kindness. And people around you will feel that. And it's a gift that you share with sentient beings. So there are many benefits and beautiful qualities that stem from patiently enduring with the experience of suffering and developing loving kindness and patience and forgiveness and humility. I mean, it's very humbling, actually, how painful life is. It's very humbling. And but humility is such a beautiful quality. And if we allow the mind to be humbled, there's so much more suffering than I want to deal with. Everywhere I turn hurts. It's like, well, guess what? you can only control so much. Samsara is a very big place, and there's a lot of sentient beings, and there's millions of past lives. It's a very complicated phenomenon, and we only have so much control. And so when we acknowledge that, a lovely sense of patience and humility, surrender, and resting in those qualities can be very beautiful. So please persevere. I wish you much healing and much capacity to be with the truth of dukkha while undoing the causes of our attaching and identifying with it. You can do it. Keep going.
Thank you so much. Question 4, my respect. What do you call a Maha bodhisattva? One who have received confirmation by a Buddha. It can be a future paceekha Buddha or a Sambawa Buddha, and have fulfilled all his paramis already. One who will be a future Buddha Sambawa and has, yeah, I think that's the repeat, sorry.
Okay, so I have to humbly say that I'm not all-knowing. I don't know everything. So I don't feel like I'm in a position to say what counts as a Maha Bodhisattva and what doesn't. So I will say, a little bit about what I do know. Yes, a Bodhisattva practitioner practices for a period of time, and they are not yet what is called an Arya Bodhisattva until, I don't think you need to have the, I'm not sure. Like I say, I don't know. When you start talking about extremely highly developed beings and how you call those extremely highly developed beings, I don't have the nuanced understanding about exactly when such a being. But let's just acknowledge the fact that there is a path of cultivating supreme and higher virtue. So we're all on the path of cultivating virtue. We all have to build those 10 parami to some degree. So for people who want to be arahants as quickly as possible, you still need to get it. You still need to develop your 5 spiritual powers. You still need to develop everything in the 10 parami to the point where you have enough spiritual power to liberate yourself from greed, hatred, and delusion. If what is often the case is in our samsaric history, at some point, you might meet a great teacher who has psychic powers. He's able to tell you something about your past life, or he's able to tell you about some interesting dynamic in a complicated relationship. And it's like, wow, isn't it amazing that my Ajahn can see that? Wow, that advice was really helpful. And I think in that kind of organic meeting, genuinely gifted spiritual teachers, what arises is a sense of faith of, I want to be just like that person when I'm an arahant. And so people begin to develop this sense of, I want to have special abilities as a teacher. I want to have boundless loving kindness. And this complicates things, because if you start making vows that when I become an arahant, I want to have full psychic powers, now you're on the path of building parami, because you've just added a few thousand more lives to your, at least, to your path towards enlightenment. Then suppose on your path towards enlightenment, you meet a great disciple of the Buddha. And it's like, oh, I want to be just like Sariputta. He's got the same amount of wisdom as the Buddha. He can explain everything. He can explain the short verses in long. He can condense the long verses in short. He understands everything. And he's such a nice guy too. I love Sariputta. I want to be just like Sariputta. I do love Sariputta. Okay, but you just add 2 asankhya's plus 100,000 eons to your path to enlightenment, right? So there is this path of building virtue. And if you get really inspired in an inspired moment before COVID, you're like, I want to be a Buddha. And then you're halfway through your 6th lockdown and you're like, I want to get liberated. But it's like, I've had enough of this. But, you know, sometimes samsara doesn't seem so bad. Okay, so we'll keep going a bit longer. And then other times samsara really sucks. It's like, okay, I've had enough of this. But it's kind of complicated. People will have made different vows at different times. And then what also happens is you just think about this Buddha and the Buddha Sasana during this period of time. you've had countries that were predominantly Theravada for a while, and then they were predominantly Mahayana, like Thailand is seen as one of the strongest Theravadan nations in the world at the moment, but for a period of several hundred years, it was a Mahayana country. So was Indonesia. So a lot of the names of towns and cities in Malaysia come from Pali. It's like from when it used to be Buddhist, and that Pali language got absorbed into the Bahasa language. So you might be born, even if you're only born in Thailand, you have a couple of lives as a Mahayanist and then a few lives as a Theravada. Now, in that life as a Mahayanist, if you were a sincere practitioner, you probably made a vow to be a Buddha or a bodhisattva as part of your morning or evening practice every day. Okay, do that for 50 years. So you've taken the bodhisattva vow, what, 700 times a year, 10 years, 7,000 times 5, 25, 35,000 times in one life. So this is where it gets a bit complicated. And so billions of beings are at some point along this path of cultivating virtue for the sake of liberation. And many of them won't have that much clarity about exactly what they're doing, because sometimes they wanted to be an arahant, and other times they wanted to be a great disciple, and then in another life they wanted to be a Buddha, and then the next life they want to be an arahant again. And so, but certainly they've been cultivating virtue, and they're somewhere along the path of cultivating enough virtue to liberate themselves. But when a person becomes an Arya Bodhisattva, what that means is the virtue has become so powerful that the virtue in the mind is made the mind have similar qualities to a being who is established on the path of enlightenment. So a stream enterer, if you're on the quick path, a stream enterer has seen through self-view, so it has wisdom, and understands that rites and rituals alone will not get them liberated, and has a glimpse nibbana. Now the thing is, a being on the parami building path can also have a lot of wisdom and can have experiences of temporary liberation. They can also glimpse nibbana and have an experience of nibbana. Their mind can become like an enlightened being. So Ajahn Achalo describes it that a well-practiced bodhisattva practitioner will have a mind like an anagami's. So an anagami, as we understand it in Theravada, means a non-returner, no greed and no hatred. But the difference between an Arya bodhisattva is they have a mind like an anagami, no greed and no hatred. That's because of thousands of lives of cultivating virtue, relinquishing greed and relinquishing aversion, and only doing wholesome things. Their mind is so inclined to wholesome that they have become like an anagami, except they can continue to be reborn. But it's a much longer and slower, more difficult path. So at a certain point, I don't know, does the bodhisattva become an Arya bodhisattva before he receives the prediction of Buddhahood from a Buddha? I don't know. Quite possibly there are some Arya bodhisattvas who have the level. Arya means noble. So there are some noble-minded bodhisattvas who may not yet have received a prediction of Buddhahood. And I think there's even a different type of bodhisattva that refuses to receive his prediction of Buddhahood, because like for Ksitigarbha, for example, the bodhisattva who's believed to reside in hell, he made his vow that he is not going to Nibbana until he has closed the doors of hell permanently. And some people say that that's not possible. So you can deduce from that that it's going to be a long time. So he probably hasn't received his prediction of Buddhahood, but he's an Arya Bodhisattva. Whether you believe he exists or not, that's up to you. I asked Ajahn Achalo. Ajahn Achalo said he does. So if I go to hell, I've made a vow that I'm going to pay respects to him. So you might as well seize your opportunity. So what else? Okay, so paceekha Buddhas. A paceekha Buddha, so they're on the path of building virtue. I think it's 3 asankhya plus 100,000 eons. So paceekha Buddhas are a very interesting phenomenon. And I do think they play an important role. So a paceekha Buddha is a Buddha who will not lay down a following or give suttas. But when you read the stories of the great disciples, And then among those, you have Nang Visakha, the lady who was the chief patroness of the Buddhist order. And so you don't just have these great bhikkhus with full psychic powers, you have these great ladies who feed 500 bhikkhus at a time, for many, many, many times. I'm a big fan of Visakha. If I go to Tushita, I want to meet her. So, well, she's a he at the moment. So and apparently, according to Ajahn Achalo, Visakha and Anathapindika both made vows to Upatak, take care of the 5 Buddhas of this eon. And so they go up in Tushita and rest in between birth and then come down and be Supataks, great attendants to Buddhas. So, and the mother of the Buddha as well. So now the mother of the Buddha made the vow to be the mother to all 5 Buddhas. So it's an interesting reflection on the empty nature of gender as well, because the Buddha's mother and Visakha are both male devas in Tushita right now, apparently, and they'll be coming down to be the mother of the Buddha and the chief patroness disciple of the Buddha in their last life when they become arahants, in the time of Maitreya. So when I go to, so don't be attached to the idea that you want to pay respects to Visakha as a woman. I want to pay respects to Visakha as a man. And then I want to see her. One of the reasons I want to be around in the time of Maitreya is I want to see these great beings and rejoice in their goodness. I want to see Maitreya, and I want to see Anathapindika. I want to see Visakha doing what they do. One last time. That's my attachment. I still have some wholesome, subtle attachments. So anyway, these paceekha Buddhas serve an important function because for beings on the path of perfecting virtue, there's these huge chunks of times where there aren't teaching Buddhas. And yet these people have a long-term goal and they need to keep accumulating virtue. So of course, Visakha gets born in the proximity to a paceekha Buddha and she starts offering food to the paceekha Buddha, similarly with Anathapindika. And a lot of these great beings on a long path who need to accumulate the virtue, they depend upon these paceekha Buddhas as sources of making merit and fueling their ultimate goal many, many, many eons away. So paceekha Buddhas do serve an important function. And just maybe truly great beings who want to help as many beings as possible, but they're just introverted in nature. They have great compassion and boundless metta, but they like to be alone. They don't like crowds. So they do what they can, and it takes a long time. So yes, but there is the path of building parami, and there are many, many, many different goals. So if you want to be an arahant as quickly as possible, you need to develop virtue enough to be able to do that. But if you want full psychic powers, it really does take longer. If you want the miracle of teaching, which was the psychic power that the Buddha praised most, that takes even longer. If you want to be foremost in anything, that takes longer. If you want to be a paceekha Buddha, that takes longer. So there's billions of beings cultivating virtue. It's a nice recollection, isn't it, when you think about it, that there are billions of beings who love virtue, who have very lofty goals, who are working towards purifying and accumulating merits and building qualities to reach that goal. I find it particularly in a time when the human realm is, the sila in the human realm is degenerating, it can be very helpful to consider that there are billions of virtuous beings with very clear goals. And there are billions more with very unclear goals. So I would recommend you to get clear on your goal if you can. Because if you can get clear on your goal, then you're able to focus and plot away at it with more clarity and diligence, which we all need. So, yes. But once a bodhisattva practitioner meets a Buddha and makes some grand offering and then says to the Buddha, I want to be just like you, then the Buddha will use his psychic powers to look way off into the future, and then he will make the proclamation, and using the power of his determination and combined with the merit of the practitioner, he can see exactly how many thousands of eons away, which world system. And it's the tradition that Buddha will will give the prediction of Buddhahood. He will say, in such and such a life, you will be named this, your mother will be named this, your father will be named this, you'll be enlightened under such and such a tree in a time when human beings have a lifespan of so many years, and you will have this many enlightened disciples. So just kind of shows you how amazing Buddhas are, that they can see that. At least for a Sankhya and 100,000 eons away, that's the shortest path to Buddhahood from the time that you receive the prediction. That's the shortest path. They can see that our Buddha received that prediction from Dipankara Buddha when he was Sumedha. And Dipankara Buddha said, yes, his mother and father's names and what the Bodhi tree would be, and all of those things. So, anyway, wherever you are on your path of developing the perfections towards liberation, please be focused, please be disciplined, and I wish you every success. And at some point, you're going to become an Aryan of some sort or other due to the power of your virtue. However many qualities you have, or the caliber of your qualities, that will depend upon how long you do it. So, and that's an individual choice. So, choose wisely.
Sadhu, Ajahn. Dear Ajahn, many thanks for your teaching. I suffer from chronic debilitating pain and have suffered for many years. I do try to observe equanimously and accept as much as I can, but at times the pain is just too intense to bear and does not respond to pain relief. With increasing age and vicissitudes of life, pain is becoming quite unbearable now. My question is, could I have some solace in the fact that at least I am exhausting some of my bad karmas in this lifetime by undergoing this suffering which I have possibly accumulated over many past lifetimes?
Yes, I think so. That is quite common. It's one of the reasons why we have to practice a lot before we get there, is that ideally we want to have cultivated quite a bit of patience and capacity to bear with painful feelings before they get that bad. But it's not uncommon in old age for people to get things like arthritis or various types of cancer, which are very painful. So yes, but if you can see it as a purification, I know the Tibetans do that, see it as a purification, and it's important not to feel guilty, though. I did terrible things, so I should feel this way. There's no room for guilt. But I don't think the person was asking that. It's just, yeah, one has compassion for the pain of the human situation. And yes, that one is experiencing these things because of past karmas, but all karmas arise, stay for some time and cease. And so it is a purification of sorts. And, there's other things one can do. In Thailand, it's very common for people to buy animals from markets who are experiencing pain. So suppose you've got like a bucket full of fish and they're gasping for air and they feel like they can't breathe. And then you have a bucket full of crabs who are tied up and they feel terribly restrained. And then you take these beings to the sea and you cut the string from the crabs and you let them go, and you throw the fish into the water and they're suddenly able to breathe. And so it's generally believed that if you help other beings to be relieved from their painful feelings that they're experiencing, then the merit of that can help you to have less pain. So I think it's good to be actively doing some things to accumulate opponent powers, different types of supportive merits. And so maybe it's harder in a place in Western countries, but certainly in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of wet markets, places where you can go and buy some fish and some turtles and some crabs, beings that are miserable while they're still alive and trapped in that situation, and liberate them from their misery. And the other thing that then the Thais do, of course, is they dedicate the merit of that to any beings that they may have harmed. And it does seem to be the case, at least sometimes for some people, that when they do produce those kind of merits, tangibly, quantifiably reducing the suffering of some sentient beings, very particular type of merit, and then dedicating that merit to any beings that you may have harmed and asking forgiveness, then people do have the experience of having less pain. Or, it's very interesting, isn't it? Sometimes the pain medicine is effective, sometimes the pain medicine isn't effective. Now that's probably karmic. So what is it that makes a medicine effective and not effective? So if you have enough supportive merits, then the chances of the medicine being effective is greater. So, yeah, so yes, see it as purification and generate some punya, some merit, dedicate merit to any beings that you may have harmed, ask forgiveness, practice loving kindness for yourself while through the painful experience. And you do have my sympathy, and some of the I'm mindful, I'm 49 years old, and approaching that part of my life where things will hurt more and more. So you notice, don't you? You notice when you're 30, you don't recover as quickly as you did in your 20s. And you notice it more when you're 40, and late 40s, you're noticing it more. So I can see where it's going. And so when I do things like that, like, as you know, I've been involved in, as have many of you, helping to feed hungry people in India and Nepal. And I do make dedications that I may, due to this merit, may I be well and happy and supported in my practice, and not have a too painful death. So that is part of my aspiration, is that in old age and death, that it not be too painful, because it's easier to keep the mind in a wholesome state if there isn't too much pain. So, I think I mentioned it last time. I'm not sure if this person has access to the cannabis oil with the THC taken out, because there's different types of pain relief. But if there's a cannabis oil with the THC taken out, CBD oil, I think does have some quite good pain relieving qualities and also immune system boosting qualities. So I don't know if this person has access to that, but it would be worth a try. Try some CBD oil, as well as whatever your doctor's given you. And yeah, may we all maintain upright minds through the pains that our karma and lives throw at us.
Sadhu, Ajahn. And there's another painful question and another quick question.
Another painful question.
another quick question. So,
no, not another painful question.
Dear Ajahn, as I do sitting meditation mindfulness of breathing 5 to 6 hours per day every day, my neck and body aching much. And I changed my meditation position to lying down, as Buddha also recommended it in the sutta. But when I lie down, very soon I will fall asleep. I need to increase my mindfulness. Is there any other way not to fall asleep when doing lying down meditation? Thank you, Ajahn.
Yes. The best way to not fall asleep when doing lying down meditation is to not do lying down meditation. So I would like to recommend walking meditation as a change of posture. So I know that some people who have well-developed spiritual qualities can bring mindfulness to the sitting posture and can get good results. I know Ajahn Viradhammo does quite a bit of that, but Ajahn Viradhammo, I think, has been a monk for 40 years, and I think he didn't start doing lying down meditation as one of his main practices until after a couple of decades of very disciplined formal practice. So one needs to have as I remember it, Lord Buddha says to be mindful in all four postures, but I'm not aware of him telling people to take the lying down posture as the meditation posture. So when one lies down to sleep or to rest, one is mindful. But as it's mostly practiced in the forest tradition, as far as I'm aware, is we're alternating between sitting and walking. And then when we're genuinely tired, then we lie down and you do your loving kindness meditation as you're falling asleep. So yeah, not everybody has a nice outdoor walking meditation path, but many people have a long living room or a hallway or a space where if you walk diagonally, there's enough space to do walking meditation. So some yoga, obviously. I'm at that age now where if I don't do my Surya Namaskar in the morning, everything will be stiff all day. So I just have to do it. I get up in the morning, I do my meditation, and before I go an arms round, I do 3 Surya Namaskar as the sun is coming up. And so it's certain things that we have to do if we want to manage the pain in our bodies. So a bit of yoga, a bit of stretching, and then alternating postures after the sitting, the walking, and yeah. And this person has said themselves that when they lie down, they fall asleep. So then I'm saying to this person, this is not a suitable meditation posture for you, unless you have a very strong coffee before you lie down, which I don't recommend either.
Dear Ajahn, thank you for your compassion to guide us. What is the meaning of the inscription at the bottom of the Buddha statue behind you? Sadhu.
Somebody's paying attention. So it's Thai language. This was the first Buddha statue at Anandagiri. It's made from sandstone. And I asked my dear beloved teacher, Thanajananand, to give it a name, which is a tradition in Thailand, giving Buddha statues names. So the name he gave it was Siampu Chinara. And Siam is the name of Thailand. Pu is like mountain. Chinarat is the victorious victor. So it's because I'm in Thailand, and because we're on a mountain, and because we're in the area of a famous Buddha statue, Buddha Chinarat, Thanajananand combined these few words. Para means statue or monk. Siampu Chinarat, the monk on the mountains in Siam, who was the victorious Raja, Dharma king. So He was supposed to go to Australia. Originally, I thought I'd be being an abbot in Australia, and we'd ordered a Buddha statue for that day, and it ended up living in Phetchabun. That's like me. Very nice Buddha statue, isn't it?
It is. Thank you, Prajan. Prajan, last question we have for today. Dear Ajahn, there are quite a few versions of loving kindness or metta meditation. Can you give us some instructions on how to do a metta meditation, and when should we do it? Thank you.
So I have a series of loving kindness meditations at my website, and I believe I've given instructions, explanations, recommendations, and a gradual training in, and I've done this similarly with compassion as well, one of the later collections, going from spreading loving kindness to oneself, neutral beings, a few beings, ultimately to all beings. So it's all there. And the website's getting a bit big now, so probably one of the easiest ways to navigate the website is to print out the index and actually have a good look what is there. A couple of hundred audio files now, so actually have a look what is there. There's a lot there. Been putting it together for nearly 10 years. And see what's there, see what you have listened to, what you haven't listened to. And sometimes we listen to things and we forget as well. So go back and brush up. We learn through repetition. And, just wanted to say a little bit about the bowing practice. I know some people are in lockdown for a really long time, and things look like they're getting better, and then they're kind of having to be cooped up again. I know it's a very difficult time for people, and for some people, other people, life is like it used to be. Things have opened up again. So, I mean, oftentimes the word waves is used, isn't it? Second wave, third wave. So it's like waves of challenges. So the bowing from a standing to, like Chinese style, from the standing to a lowering, there's something about it which is energetic, engaging your body in a dynamic way. I find it really, really helpful for shifting mind states. Like for myself, I've also had some periods where I've just felt really sad about it. I think it's really sad that so many businesses are going bankrupt and so many people are drinking so much and so many people are killing themselves. You know, easily as sad as the people dying of COVID is all of the terrible consequences of the lockdowns. So I feel really sad about that. A lot of friends in Victoria, very, very strict lockdown there. A lot of businesses will go completely broke and a lot of people are absolutely heartbroken. And I feel sad about this. I'm a caring human being. I care about these things. And of the Thai people, so many businesses which take generations to build up. You can't just open them again once they've gone bankrupt and they've closed. It's a very, very difficult time for many millions of people. So, but I have found that in doing something which engages the body quite fully in an energetic way, it just helps to shift through a heavy mind state, because it's good to have compassion, but a heavy sadness isn't very helpful. And neither is, you know, if some people agree with the policy, some people don't agree with the policy. So there might be some resentment, there might be some anger. These things aren't helpful either. They can be channeled and focused skillfully. You might want to be writing some letters or calling some ministers or whatever. You can express your intelligent opinions, ask people to behave responsibly. But in terms of not making your mind fall under the weight of heavy negativity, that kind of full bowing practice, suppose that you're going to do 108 bows, it really does help when you make your gratitude to the Buddha the object, or you'll make your aspiration to liberation the object. You'll make your purifying body, speech, and mind. So there's just kind of standing, bowing, standing, bowing, standing, bowing. One of the chants that we went through a few weeks ago, the Jina Banjara Katha, is just such a powerful blessing, visualizing 28 Buddhas above your head, visualizing Arahants and Suttas around your body. So there's things that you can do if you've got some heavy mind states, you get a bit stuck, you know, really do that visualization, do that chant 3, 5, 7, 9 times, however long you need to do it to brighten the mind. You have to be willing to put up a bit of a wrestle with heavy negative mind states or depression or sadness. As however justified it might be, it is a sad situation, but allowing the mind to be sad for a long time isn't helpful. So we have to do what we can. So I find myself just going to the bottom of the mountain and doing the bows all the way to the chedi. By the time I get to the chedi, the mind is exhilarated. Obviously, many of you don't have a chedi at home. I'm very lucky, I do. But you can set up a shrine and just think of the Buddha's qualities, think of how you have the potential to purify because that's how you do it, above the head and then here and then 3 spots, you know, eyes, throat, body. You know, I aspire to purify my speech, thoughts, and bodily actions. And we just taking an aspiration, a beautiful aspiration as a meditation, and dynamically engaging the body and mind in that way. That really does, because then after a certain period of time, you get the body's natural endorphins begin to rush through, where you get a bit of a natural, wholesome rush of your own body's capacity to send some hormones that give rise to pleasure in the body. Same as if you go for a jog or a swim or something. So I am finding it myself helpful to do the dynamic, engaging bowing practice to shift through heavy emotions. And then similarly with doing a chant in repetition, basically do it many times until your mind brightens up. So just because we're in a depressing situation, which is sad, don't have to be depressed and sad. That's the point I want to make. So yeah, it's a depressing situation. It's totally reasonable to respond with sadness. But we are Buddhist practitioners. We have many tools. We are spiritual warriors. So even though it's a depressing and sad situation, I'm going to brighten my mind. I'm going to gladden it. Because you don't want to be one more sad person. There's enough. So put up a fight, spiritual warriors, bow and chant. Okay, I leave you with that. Wishing you all well. Take care. So you all know how to make your teacher happy, don't you? Practice. Okay, bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Joyce, and thank you, Safety, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to talk to her. See you 2 weeks from now.